Welcome in the latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Bratton. I go by SEC Mike on Twitter. And I'm joined, as always, by my cousin Shane, who goes by Big Orange Vols on Twitter. What are you up to, you big Tennessee homer?
Hey, buddy, what's going on?
Oh, man, just been sitting here soaking up all this NFL draft coverage for 3 days, man. And wouldn't you know it, the SEC dominates once again.
What is it, 17 years in a row?
Yes, sir. That's the number, 17 in a row.
They got to add more teams up there, so they can even the playing field. So, hey, I will say I was kind of surprised how many Big Ten went. But it also shows just how terribly coached and managed they are up there, because I didn't see any of them competing in the college football playoffs. Just kidding. Ohio State was a little scary, but we took care of them.
Yeah, so 17 years in a row, most picks, SEC, of course, most first-rounders, SEC, most number one overall picks in NFL history, just adding to the list with Bryce Young going to Carolina with the top overall pick. Man, just a great day to be an SEC fan. You know what?
Absolutely. It's kind of wild, as a Vol fan. Obviously, we saw Will Levis sitting back there in the green room, and all them Vol fans making fun of him sitting back there, and then he signs with the Titans. I was like, man, you could. It's like, what are you doing? I've never seen so much turmoil online. They just don't know what to do with their hands. It's like you spent all these years, last 2 years, bashing Will Levis, and now you kind of need to support him. So I've seen few people come around and whatnot, but I would say, man, this was a fun draft. I thought it was a good draft. I thought it was exciting. There was, a lot of, like you said, a lot of SEC players getting picked. How many did we have total? It was like 60. Was it how many? I've got it wrote down here.
I got the list of every single player, but I don't have the total in front of me.
62. So 62. Think about that. 62 players from the SEC drafted. Of course, 38 of them were from Georgia, so just kidding.
And I think the Eagles took about Georgia, half of them.
God, how big is that? How big? That was the storyline coming out of this thing. So I saw a guy the other day, yesterday. He was wearing a Georgia hat, and so, naturally, I'm drawn to, if I see an SEC team or something, I'll usually talk to that individual, and he had it all, man. Georgia shirt, Georgia hat, and all this stuff. And I said, "Did you become an Eagles fan last night?" And he goes, "Well, I don't hate them anymore, Yeah,
I mean it's pretty wild to see clearly. They have taken notice of what old Kirby Smart's doing down there in Athens.
Yeah.
I saw this stat, Shane. Every single starter from Georgia, not from last year, even though a lot of guys off last year's teams in the NFL,
right,
but 2 years ago, the first national championship team, Shane, all 11 of the starters on that defense are now in the NFL, and that does not include, Shane, Jalen Carter, who just went number 9 overall, because he was, he was great, but he wasn't good enough to start because he was a younger player. But so 12 off that defense, just 2 years removed from a national championship in the NFL. How insane is that?
Well, it's crazy because, when this was happening, you and I were saying, hey, man, this is the version of LSU's offense a few years back, on the defense side. And it didn't sound believable, but it's one of those classes that just comes around so often, and they produced. The production on the field, that's the key. It's not like we look back and say, well, this is a team that had a lot of talent but got away, but you're looking at it and saying, man, this is a team that created this kind of pipeline of NFL talent down there. So, yeah, it was a big win for Georgia Bulldogs. Been a win for a lot of teams. A lot of programs got to see some players drafted. So I thought that was pretty cool. Just the Obviously the Alabamas and Georgias, they're going to get all the pats on the back, but there was a lot of teams in the SEC that got some love.
Right. So I thought, Shane, what we would do, I've written them down here, only Vanderbilt was the one that didn't have a guy drafted, unfortunately. But the 13 other teams, I've got every single selection that they had in the 2023 NFL draft. I thought we would go team by team, and any standouts or any thoughts on these selections. How's that sound?
Yeah, sounds great, man.
All right, so bear with me. This is a long list here for Alabama because they tied Georgia for the most picks with 10. They each had 10. So we're just doing Alabama right now.
And before you jump in this is one of the things I wanted to ask you, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to point at a few of these teams and the amount of talent that they've got going into the NFL and go back to it and say, well, did it match the production that we saw in the SEC last year? Alabama was one of those that definitely stood out to me. When you got 10 players drafted and you didn't go to an SEC championship, you didn't go to a college football playoffs, and we all know the stories. There were some close games, but it's a lot of NFL talent, and I felt like it didn't match the production. A couple other teams I thought stood out to me, Mike, was Auburn. Florida Gators was another one.
Yep. Six. They had 6 players drafted. Florida
absolutely. Did. Is there any? Are you seeing? Which one's a bigger hit in your opinion? The fact that Alabama had 10 go to the NFL and not go to an SEC championship, or one of those other teams? Or is there maybe one I'm not mentioning that stood out to you? Kind of just like icing on the cake of a disappointing season last year.
Shane, I think one that, and I made the joke, Shane, and it kind of was a joke, but it's also true in my opinion. Hell, Nick Saban had the number 1 and the number 3 overall selections in this draft.
Yeah.
Yet they lost multiple games. Kirby Smart has passed him by, if you need to know other evidence than that. But, yeah, so, I echo those sentiments on Alabama. But, having 10 guys in the NFL, that will sell on the recruiting trail. So, not that they need help down there on that. But so it's not like a total indictment. But one that really stood out to me, Shane, and I'm trying to warm this fan base back up this offseason, but I'm going to have to slide them one more time. Kentucky, only 3 players drafted, and Will Levis not going in the first round. I'm not sitting here to dunk on anybody, the well-documented comments I've made about that. But, Kentucky's an NFL factory. It really has been. And I'm not seeing it. We had one guy in the second round, Chris Rodriguez, outstanding running back. He was drafted in the 7th, and a guy in the 7th. We'll get to their full selections here in a minute, but that's a little alarming, Shane, because we're supposed to be a developmental program. We've been patting ourselves on the back for putting a lot of guys in the NFL.
Right.
It didn't translate this year, and maybe that's a big reason why they were
early rounders too. So
right. Disappointing
that's
there.
A good point.
A&M. I hate these people, Shane, and I'm not going to sit here and do it, but it always bothers me because you just don't know the situations behind the scenes, family situations. There's a million things that go into these decisions, but I hate to see they had 3 players, Shane, declare early for the draft. Devon Achane. Now, he went in the round 3, and if running backs, if they valued him a little bit more, he probably would have been a second, maybe even a first rounder. So I don't have any problem with that. But Antonio Johnson, he was outstanding safety. Yeah. Round 5. Jalen Jones, another defensive back, round 7. And again, I hope they make the NFL, and I hope they make a ton of money. Where they got drafted doesn't matter, really. But potentially cost themselves a lot of money, and potentially, Shane, these are like the only 3 starters they're losing. Just imagine a world where all 3 of those guys come back. We're already singing the praises of A&M, but have we got these guys back? I think it would have been a better decision all the way around. But again, I don't know the situation, so I'm not calling out their decisions. But it's just disappointing to see guys go early and then get drafted late. I hate to see it.
Yeah, that's just the nature of this game, that we talk about, and these are the ones that the coaches are making notes on, though. When you got another player thinking about, hey, I'm just going to call my shot and go to the NFL, you can say, well, look how many millions of dollars that cost you if you make the wrong decision. When you could stay here, make $1 million, NIL, get better and move you up the list. So you typically, we praise the success stories and we don't talk enough about the ones that slip away and cost themselves, their families, a ton of money. So that's a good point, Mike. And I'm sure these coaches, when they're talking to a player that's thinking about leaving early, is going to bring this up. But it's also nice to shed a little light on that.
All right, Shane. So let's go through this team by team, and just let me get through the picks here, and then we'll give thoughts on each one.
Don't interrupt you. I got you. Noted.
Because they're not going to be all. There's only one other that's going to be this long. So we'll just go in alphabetical here. Alabama had 10 selections. Shane, of course, already referenced the first overall pick, Bryce Young to Carolina. Mm-hmm. Will Anderson to the Houston Texans. They traded up for Will Anderson, so that is quite a coup. Alabama had the number 1 and number 3 overall selections. This was a surprising number 12 overall, Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back to Detroit. He's an outstanding player, but I didn't think he'd go quite that high. Maybe a Alvin Kamara 2.0 there. Round 2, the safety Brian Branch, also to Detroit. Round 3, this is why Vanderbilt didn't have a selection, Shane. Tyler Sheen to the Eagles, former Vanderbilt player that transferred to Alabama. Byron Young, the first of 2 Byron Youngs we're going to talk about, to Las Vegas, also in round 3. Jordan Battle, the safety, to Cincinnati Bengals. Tight end Cam Latu to the San Francisco 49ers. Henry To'oTo'o in round 5. He's going to be Will Anderson's teammate in Houston, so that's pretty cool. And then last but not least, round 7, DeMarco Hellams, the safety, to the Atlanta Falcons. So, Shane, of those 10, I get Bryce Young. I mean, I can't believe there was even a debate. I don't think it really was a debate once Carolina got that pick. I think they knew they were going to take Bryce Young. He's that dynamic. But anything stand out? Were you surprised that Jahmyr Gibbs? At times he looked sensational, so I'm not questioning him at all. But maybe the production didn't quite necessarily match up. Maybe that goes back to your point. Alabama not perhaps getting the most out of these guys, and particularly this elite running back that went number 12 in the entire NFL draft. I mean, he made plays, but when I think number 12 overall pick, I think of someone that dominated college, and we didn't see that in just the 1 year at Alabama.
Yeah, and I guess the biggest one, I guess that is one of the bigger surprises, just too, because running back is not the same position in the NFL it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago. It's a lot of times it's a committee, and, you don't quite need somebody drafted in the first round. So if anyone's drafted at running back position in the first round, it automatically is going to set up some signals. So I think there was flashes of Gibbs last year, and a lot of people realized how super talented he is. But, again, knock on offensive coordinator here, getting him in the wrong position at times, not taking advantage of all of his skill sets, because not only was he good at running, but he's good at receiving. And right. Sometimes I felt like that got negated during the game. So I think that's part of it. There was a lot of noise, a lot of rumbles coming into the draft about him and the Texas guy. They were trying to decide who's the better running back of this class. Mm-hmm. So I truly think Detroit got a good one. They're already trading the Georgia boy. Getting Swift out of there. So this clearly he's gonna be touching the ball sooner than later. Yep. But I think the big one, man, is just Bryce. The fact that this is Nick Saban's first pick. I mean, that's crazy. As many players as he's put into the league, that this is the first time he's ever had a first pick selected. And, and the knock on Bryce was his size. A lot of people, kept putting him down because of the size he is. But it just goes to show, ultimately he was the better quarterback in the country last year. Carolina's not just going to take a chance on anybody. Right. I'm sure they sorted and felt that he would be the best one to run that franchise. So I think that's huge. That's big for Bryce. And
he was big enough to be good in the SEC, I'll tell you that.
Seriously, I mean, think about it. We put half the league in there. It's like if you can make it through the SEC, you got a good shot at the NFL. Now, don't get me wrong. It's a different world. It's a different animal. You've seen some players struggle in the NFL that was dominant in the SEC, but this is I think it's a good situation for Bryce, and I think he's going to have some time to kind of build, kind of grow into that role. So excited to see what he does on Sundays.
Now, Arkansas, Shane, they only had 2 selections, and it started both in the 3rd round. Drew Sanders, the linebacker, to the Denver Broncos, and Ricky Stromberg, the offensive lineman, to Washington. And, the biggest thing that jumps off to me, Shane, was just I'm surprised. I don't follow NFL as closely as I used to, but I'm surprised Drew Sanders lasted the 3rd round because he was such a dynamic presence for that Arkansas defense that, they had a lot of issues, but he was one of the bright spots. He was getting to the quarterback, tackling machine, interceptions, fumble recoveries. He was a beast. Have to feel like Denver got a real steal, and he's another one. Again, I'm not sitting here saying should have come back to college because I don't know his situation, but man, I would have loved to seen him back for one more year and maybe be a 1st-round pick. But it is what it is. He's making a lot of money now to play for the Denver Broncos. You know what?
Yeah, I think it was time for him to go. If you're a fan, obviously you'd want him to come back, but kid obviously slipped a little bit in the draft, and I don't think that was because of production on the field or something he could have moved up the list. I think this was a situation that you could move down too, man. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's like when you're pulling your shot, you got to be ready to go. And I am kind of surprised he lasted to the 3rd round. I thought easily a 2nd rounder. I've even seen some publications have him in the 1st, but I think this was it's still something that you can hang your hat on when you're talking about Arkansas football. Another great, they got a crop right behind them, so you want to talk about Kentucky being a machine. Arkansas's had some bad years, but they've also created a lot of talent during that time.
Right. And to your point, sometimes, you maximize your stock, and maybe that's the perfect time to make that jump to the NFL. You know what?
Absolutely.
All right, and to your point, Shane, Auburn, they had 5 selections, which probably a lot of people would be surprised by that. Derek Hall in round 2 to Seattle. He was a hell of a player. Mm-hmm. Tank Bigsby in the 3rd round to Jacksonville, so he's going to be on, imagine him and Trevor Lawrence on the same offense. That's pretty insane. Round 4, Colby Wooten, the linebacker to Green Bay. Love that pick. Round 5, linebacker Owen Popota, Arizona. And then another, the steal of round 6, if you ask me, Shane, kicker Anders Carlson to Green Bay. So Green Bay loves them some Auburn Tigers here. But, several defensive players and an outstanding running back. Any of those stand out to you?
Well, Popo I've always had a soft spot for him. I really do think he's better than where he was drafted. And, I just think he was not developed properly. And that's one thing you're going to see when you have revolving door with coaches bounced around. You're going to get passed through the crack, and you're going to have to be constantly learning playbooks. That's why I think he's one that is going to excel in the NFL just because he's used to learning on the fly. But that's one right there that I think, 6-7 years from now, you're looking back saying, now, where did that kid play? That's and Tank, I love Tank. He's always been one of my favorite running backs, but again, ran hard in Auburn. So it makes me wonder, is that part of the reason he moved down is just, the amount of carries that he had down there on the plains.
Right. Now, to your point, Shane, you made this earlier. Florida, they had 6, high number, including the number 4 overall selection, Anthony Richardson, of course, to the Indianapolis Colts. 2 players in round 2, Shane, Gervon Dexter to Chicago, the defensive lineman, Osiris Torrance, the offensive lineman, to the Bills. But again, both in round 2. Round 4, the linebacker Ventrell Miller to Jacksonville, staying close to home. Love to see that. Round 5, the receiver Justin Shorter to Buffalo. And round 6, defensive back Amari Burney to the Las Vegas Raiders. So maybe this is another one. Shane, I've said enough bad things against the Florida Gators, so I'm not going to say it. Maybe I'll leave it up to you, but 6 players in the draft, number 4 overall pick, mass exodus of the roster. I mean, this is. I don't know if this says anything about Billy Napier, does it? Let me ask you. That's probably the best way to kick it to you.
Well, you got the 4th pick, man, quarterback at that, and the production that we had on the field last year did not match that. If you got a top 5 draft pick at quarterback, you would think that you're going to have a pretty damn good season, or a pretty damn good excuse. And I don't think they had a good excuse. I think with this offensive line talent that they had, I think they missed the boat. The young running backs, there was some opportunity. There were some explosive plays to be had on that offensive side of the ball, and they fell short of that. Now, obviously, we talk about the locker room situation. We don't know what that's like. But Anthony Richardson, getting picked 4th, this is what people are going to be talking about for a while. They're going to constantly be comparing Will Levis to Anthony Richardson, who's doing better in their career, and they're going to go back and use them against each other, People are surprised, because that's kind of that spot. Will could have went there, people are surprised that Anthony Richardson's the one, especially ESPN. It just blew their mind that Anthony, is going for the 4th pick here. But, this is also one of those quarterback that, you're hearing the comparisons to other NFL greats. So, I mean, he's got the body, he's got the frame. We've talked about that since he's been down there in Florida.
Let me ask you this, Shane, and maybe I'm completely off here, but it feels like Anthony Richardson is going to go one of 2 ways. Almost like how Michael Vick, kind of took, let's on the field. He kind of took over the NFL, and he was a sensation. And, man, for years, you could not play anybody in damn Madden video game without them being the Falcons, because they wanted Michael Vick for good reason.
Yes.
He's going to be a sensational superstar or a bum, for a lack of a better word, on the field. Again, I'm strictly talking on the field. It's almost like he could be a superstar, or they're going to be like, whoa, God. You know why everybody got fired at Indy? They drafted so Richardson. I mean, it feels like it's going to be one or the other. Am I wrong, or is there a middle road? I don't know. What do you think?
No, I think that's it. Like I said, when you go that early in the draft, there's a lot of pressure to produce early. So, and you look at pressure, it didn't work so well in Gainesville. There was a lot of pressure on Anthony Richardson, and that's part of the problems that he had was, big games. He didn't make it, so. But again, I don't want to pile on the kid. We did enough of that last season. He's got a shot. He has got plenty of talent. He's going to have some help down there. So I think he's going into a pretty good situation. But if I told you, Mike, that Anthony, if I'm telling you, we're doing this pod last year, and I said Anthony Richardson's going 4th. You're gonna have a couple of offensive line. You're gonna have a wide receiver going to the NFL in this draft. I mean, what do you think the record? If I had to have you guess on the record with just that stat line, you would expect more than what
probably
we got last
10 and
season.
2. This is why I had Florida so high, because I thought Anthony Richardson was going to be a superstar, and he was in that first game. And by God, I was ready to tweet people all season long, but
absolutely,
he just never put it all together. But maybe that speaks to that. He's very young. His ceiling is just incredible. I think he could be a superstar. I really do, and I hope
maybe
he is.
That's what he needs. Just a little more TLC, a little more. And you don't have a lot of that in the floor. I mean, it's a short rope in the NFL, but you are totally surrounded by capable bodies to get you in the right spot. When you're not the best guy in the room anymore, I think it grows you up a little.
Yep. All right, the Georgia Bulldogs, Shane, again, tied for the most with Alabama, 10 selections. So let me run through these real quick. 3 first-rounders.
I'll be back in 5 minutes, all right? I'm going to get another beer.
Jalen Carter, number 9 overall to Philadelphia. Broderick Jones, the offensive lineman, to Pittsburgh at number 14. Nolan Smith, the outstanding outside linebacker, number 30, to Philadelphia. Again, that's going to be a theme here. Round 3, tight end Darnell Washington to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, I love them some Bulldogs. Round 4, Kaylee Ringo to the Eagles once again. Stetson Bennett, how about it, brother? Round 4 to the L.A. Rams. Mm-hmm. Round 5, Christopher Smith to Las Vegas. Robert Beal to San Francisco. Warren McClendon to the L.A. Rams. And then last but not least, in round 7, running back Kenny McIntosh to the Seattle Seahawks. Is there anything that stands out to you there?
Oh, yeah, my big boy coming to Pittsburgh next year. I don't know, how did you make it to the 3rd round? How did that big ass sneak through the draft? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, could be an offensive lineman, could be a tight end.
Absolutely.
I mean, he can do it all for
he screams Pittsburgh, man.
That was one of those guys that, during the draft, they're like, this could be Darnell here. And they had to say it for about 3 hours, because so many people were high on him.
They were talking about, that's like you watch some of those, like, who's the highest projected, and it just sits there, and you're like, man, what did he do? He smoked weed or something before the combine? Is there some character issue or flaw that we don't know about, And I'm not saying that. I'm not saying Washington had any of those problems, but there was a reason he fell, and maybe, again, this is just experience. He wasn't required to be the guy in Georgia. He will be required at some point to be the guy at Pittsburgh, So that's a kid, too, that I think has got a higher ceiling than most. So that's the first one that stood out to me because I'm a Pittsburgh Steeler homer, and I absolutely love our picks here, man. I thought we knocked it out. That's what you do. You do like the Eagles. When in doubt, you pull from national championship football teams. You know what I'm saying? So right. I think that's a big one.
Here's something I should have said earlier, Shane. I apologize. I should have led with this. But obviously we know this draft is a complete crapshoot most of the time.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that really helps is going to a strong organization with leadership. And that's why I think you see guys like this that, for whatever reason, Darnell fell. He goes to the Steelers. Like that's going to be a perfect place for him. Because Mike Tomlin's been the coach there. He's been the coach there forever. They don't like to fire people left and right. There's other examples. The Eagles are strong in leadership. Kansas City, Green Bay, New England. There's a reason these teams are generally at the top. And that's not to say they don't miss, but you're not going to have young players come in there and do whatever the hell they want. And you know what I mean? Like, you see that a lot in Arizona. You see it a lot with the Chargers or Jacksonville. And these teams that struggle year after year after year. I think a lot of success in the NFL, not all of it, because clearly talent and coaching and all that, but I think a lot of it is fitting into an organization that already has leadership, that already has standards. And once these players come in, they can get quickly acclimated to it, and they get on the field, and they're just the next, piece of the chain. Yeah. I think there's something to that. I really do.
Well, and quickly identify what they're good at. Even the kid McIntosh going to Seahawks. Mm-hmm. I have no doubt in my mind that he's going to be utilized in the best capacity up there. It's a run-friendly team. I think Stetson going to the Rams, that's another one. Not asked to do anything.
Right.
Just come in there, be a backup for a minute. Learn this role. He's been a backup before he took the starting role. So that's another one I think was a great. Ringo slipping in the draft a little bit. I thought he held on a little bit longer than he should, but landed in a perfect spot there in Philadelphia. That's another guy that when he gets that second contract, he takes advantage of being in a good place.
Right, and he already knows half the roster because they're all Bulldogs.
Exactly. They're all living in one neighborhood, Yeah. Kirby's going to have him a little house up there,
Yeah.
Wait, is Kirby going to the NFL? The rumor mill's already started. He's going to Philly.
All right, Kentucky, Shane. Again, 3 selections. Will Levis in round 2 to the Titans. Yeah. Round 6, Chris Rodriguez to Washington. No idea how he fell so far. And round 7, Carrington Valentine to Green Bay. So that goes back to what I was saying, man. I mean, I'm used to 5, 6 draft picks, and maybe it's just a down year. They had some guys come back. Maybe they'll hit it big next NFL draft. But that's a concern for me, Shane, because if I recall, Kentucky had their highest rated recruiting class ever 2 seasons ago. or like 2 recruiting classes ago, and I think they have steadily declined. Now, I don't know, that may be irrelevant because they utilized the transfer portal. It's how they got their last quarterback. It's how they got their current quarterback. It's how they got their current running back. So there's other factors, but I don't know. Maybe we have hit a ceiling at Kentucky. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't want to overreact on one draft class, Mike. I mean, they did have a terrible season, and sometimes your recruiting class may look good. You may have the right stars, you know, but when it comes down to it, you're not as good as people said you were. You didn't play good together, and that's exactly what happened in Kentucky. There was some talent. Clearly, they're playing in the NFL here, but this is a roster that just couldn't get their shit together, and I think we put that one in the rearview mirror, Mike. I'm not going to bury Kentucky's program off of one draft. You got 3. I mean, I remember there was a time you weren't getting any. So there is still a lot of improvement up there in Lexington. And I think next year is just another class, another stepping stone for some of these kids to get to playing on Sundays. So, things didn't go well. Okay, snap, clear, move on. That's what we're going to do up here in Kentucky. And honestly, I'll go back to Will Levis. Ammunition, man. You know, the last thing, there was a clip floating around where he didn't want to be the guy sitting in the green room. Well, he's the guy. You know, he is the guy that got embarrassed on national TV. Use it. Use it as ammunition. Build your brand. Become better for it. And I think if Will Levis comes out here and does half of what we think he's capable of, you know, we may be 4 years into this thing saying, damn, can't believe this kid was at Kentucky.
I gotta be honest with you, Shane, it was kind of hard to feel bad for him when he's surrounded by beautiful women for 4 hours. You know what I mean? I mean, I think they were there for the women more than they were for Will Levis' reactions.
That's right, man. That's yeah, I think he'll be fine, you know. I think he'll be fine.
All right, how about LSU, Shane? 6 selections. B.J. Ojulari in round 2 to Arizona. Round 4, Anthony Bradford to Seattle. Jay Ward to Minnesota. Round 5, Jacqueline Roy to Minnesota. A couple of Vikings there. I love this one, Shane. I think this could be, everybody says steal of the draft. This legitimately could be. Round 6, Keisha Butte to New England. Yeah. Jarek Bernard Converse to the New York Jets. So that's your picks. And it's almost the reverse, Shane, of what we were saying about Alabama. You got all these picks, you didn't get it done.
Yeah.
LSU, you only had one pick in the top 3, bringing a ton back. I think that's got to give you hope if you're an LSU fan that, man, we got something special. But how about this, Shane? Shout out to Brody Miller. He covers LSU for The Athletic. I thought he put this tweet out here, and it was great. In 2020, LSU's class, it was a touted class. This was right after the national championship. These are the players they signed, Shane, that were rated in the top 80.
Yeah.
Arik Gilbert. I mean, he's never been heard from again. He's currently at Nebraska. Eli Ricks, freshman All-American, transferred to Alabama. He didn't even get drafted. Keisha Butte, who, again, here, fell all the way down to the 6th round. Jacqueline Roy, 5th rounder. Philip Webb, no impact. Jordan Tolles, no impact. That's rough, man. When you sign that many elite prospects and most of them never heard from again, I don't know what that says, but it's troubling.
Yeah, but we got a new one, man. They weren't family, as Coach would say. But I will tell you, it's kind of. I think it gives you hope if you're an LSU. Look what we were able to do without that much talent. And I'm not going to say that much talent. They got plenty of talent down there. But it felt like he got the most out of what was on that roster and what happens when he starts loading up his own guys. So I think that's important. Butte, that's one of those that easily could have been a first round if he kept his nose clean, did what he was supposed to. You know, he could have been a top 15 pick if he would have. I mean, that's what he was projected. Right. Fell in the draft. It kind of reminded me of those days with Randy Moss. You remember when he's at Marshall, and we kept like, oh man, it's he kept sliding. And then I remember my Pittsburgh Steelers, we had a chance. I was like, just get him. I don't care if he's had trouble, he's super talented. That's kind of the way I felt with Booty is he is super talented, but there's that, there's that devil on his shoulder that's got him in trouble a few times. And you see some of these diva wide receivers, I think some of the best that use that for good, or they just wallow in the bad. And I never forget that Blackman guy from Oklahoma State.
Justin Blackman,
great. It's had so much talent, so much opportunity, but just couldn't get out of his damn way. So I'm hoping that he's surrounded by mentors and clears his mind and gets back to just playing some damn football, because that's a kid that I think is an absolute steal in the draft.
Mm-hmm. All right, how about Ole Miss, Shane? We got 4 guys selected. Round 2 at the top, Jonathan Mingo to Carolina, so a little weapon there for Bryce Young. Round 4, Tavius Robinson, the lineman, to Baltimore. Zach Evans, running back, fell all the way to the 6th round to the L.A. Rams. Round 7, Nick Broker to Buffalo, the offensive lineman. It seems to me, Shane, like the Rams are sitting here saying, we'll catch all these SEC stars that are falling. I was impressed with what the Rams were doing.
Yeah, Rams clearly had a recipe here, and it works. Honestly, if you get the right ones, you can build a hell of a team in the NFL. So I really like what the Rams did great. But this is a team that it seems like, and I don't want to bury Coach Luke, but back then, do you remember? We were just struggling. We were just anything and everything. Forget the super talented receivers and the class that wasn't yours. It just felt like that was it after that. And then here comes Lane Kiffin, and through the portal and everything, he's created something down there, and it is also going to be an NFL stepping stone. So
right.
I'm excited to see what they put in the league in the future, but I think there was some steals in here, man. I really do. I think there's some diamonds in the rough. Maybe wasn't utilized exactly the way they're going to do in the NFL, but some of these guys are going to stick around for a while.
And I wonder, Shane, if at some point it really helps Ole Miss that they already run that thing like an NFL franchise. They got a GM. They bring in all these free agents. And, they'll bring in these guys, and I know part of the pitch, Shane, is, hey, you're going to go to the NFL, new system. The way it works, and you want to do your whole career where you get drafted, but that's just not realistic. There's free agency. You move from team to team, sometimes annually. Sometimes your position coach changes, your coordinator, your head coach. You have got to be willing to adapt on the fly. And I wonder, as more kids come through Ole Miss and they come in at a high rate and they have success doing that in college, have to think that's going to help them in the NFL. I can't see any argument against it.
No, I'm with you here, Mike. And I'm sorry, I'm just kind of trying to look up because I referenced Luke and what was the year all them boys came out? AJ and all them. Metcalf, and was he was there, right?
He was there,
the
17
coach. And not.
I think they fired his ass, and then they all came out, or it was like that, or it was definitely during his time, but or either that or
recruit. I can't.
I think Hugh Freeze. See, I think Hugh Freeze recruited those guys.
Right.
But Hugh Freeze got fired right before the season started.
Yeah, he was intern for a little bit, and then 2017, 18 to 19, he was there. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to. Maybe I shouldn't have used him as a reference. But there was in that time frame, you got to admit there was a little drop off in talent, and you were afraid that we're never going to compete in the SEC West again. And it's
you're 100% right, Shay. But I would context is important, and you have to think everybody on the recruiting trail was saying, don't go to Ole Miss. Matt Luke he's going to be gone in 3 years, which he was. But also, I think more importantly, they had sanctions, and there was always threat of sanctions. So that kills you in recruiting too. So because he went on to Georgia and he was offensive line coach, not head coach, of course, but he had good success there. But So I think it's all those, but I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, that we're seeing the effects of that with Ole Miss just having 4 guys in the draft.
Yeah, expect that number to rise.
Yep. All right, how about Mississippi State, Shane? 2 Bulldogs selected. Emmanuel Forbes, outstanding corner in round 1 to Washington, number 16 overall. And then Cameron Young in the round 4 to Seattle. So just 2 Bulldogs, but hey, we keep hearing from all these Bulldogs, Shane. We didn't lose much. Maybe this is what they're talking about. They didn't lose a lot of elite talent, and maybe we're discounting what they got to work with down there in Starkville.
Well, that's what I'm taking away from this, Mike. Optimistic, I want to go with that next year. This number is closer to 5 or 6, even. That's what you need, man. You need some of that talent to stick around during this little transition that we're in. And if all goes well, I think Arnett is going to make out like a bandit here.
Mm-hmm. Now, Missouri, Shane, they only had 1 selection, but he is a big fan of Cousy. Shane, round 4, defensive lineman Isaiah McGuire to Cleveland.
Yeah.
Right now, we're 1 for 1, brother, in players we interviewed at SEC Media Days that got drafted.
Right now, you know
right
what I'm saying? I don't want to say the Midas touch, but if you want to go to the next level, you better have an interview scheduled for that SEC podcast. But fantastic interview. I was more nervous than he was. You know what I'm saying? I remember that, and it was just a cool guy. And again, after you talk to somebody, after you put a face to the name. Yep. You watch him a little bit more during the year, and I knew he had it. Everybody knew he had it. So no surprise that he got picked there in the NFL. Missouri had him a hell of a and a great ambassador of the game. That's one of the cool things about that kid. You watch these guys go to the next level, and then they get their care boxes, and they're wearing their gear around the locker room and stuff like that. This is a guy that is very proud of his university, and I think that helps too when you see him in the NFL.
Mm-hmm. And you got to remember, Shane, I mean, the defense was a train wreck. Yeah. They were outstanding last year, and they're bringing a lot of guys back that could have had their name called this weekend. So, again, we cannot say it enough, man. Missouri defense, watch out for them next season. How about South Carolina, Shane? 5 guys drafted. Cam Smith, the outstanding corner in round 2. Zach Pickens, a defensive lineman to Chicago, round 3. Darius Rush, another defensive back, round 5 to Indianapolis. Round 7, Javon Gwynn, the offensive lineman, Atlanta. We're 2 for 2. SEC Media Day, get you drafted, just saying. And then receiver Jalen Brooks to the Dallas Cowboys there. So nice showing, I thought, for Beamer and company. 5 guys to the league, considering what they inherited down there. It was a rough roster transition, and that was the beginning of the portal. So it's like players jumping out because understandably, they signed up for another coaching staff. They didn't know Beamer, but to get 5 of these guys to the league, I think that's very impressive.
Absolutely, man. A lot of defense there, Mike. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the thing, I think, with South Carolina later in the season sealed the deal for a few of these cats. When they finally started playing together, they became a pretty ugly defense to go against, and they're going to continue to be. There's a lot of NFL talent still in Columbia on that side of the ball. So, no, this is a big showing for South Carolina, no doubt.
And I think one thing you can't overlook, Shane. I think a lot of these guys, if they're going to play in the NFL, you know what they're going to have to do?
What's that?
Play that Beamer ball special teams, which we know. Yeah. They specialize in down there in Columbia. I think NFL teams, they're smart enough. They really focus in on that. If these guys are going to make the 53-man roster, they're going to have to play special teams. And if you're getting a Gamecock, you're getting a guy that not only is willing to play it, but excels in that aspect of the game. That's really going to help them too. I really do think.
Absolutely.
Now, how about Tennessee, Shane? Also with 5 selections. First round, number 10 overall, Darnell Wright to Chicago. How about that? Round 3, man, they went on a run here. Hendon Hooker to Detroit. Jalen Hyatt to the Giants, Cedric Tillman to Cleveland, and Byron Young to the L.A. Rams. All those, Shane, were within 9 picks, 4 selections of Tennessee Vols. How about it?
I love it, man. Absolutely love it. It was a great showing for Tennessee. This is, Heupel's building something there, and it's starting to show on draft day because nothing against Pruitt, but if Pruitt were there, I don't think we have this many players going to the NFL draft. There would have been a couple of them. Well, I think obviously what's his name's going to go? Darnell, yeah. I mean, he would.
I don't know.
I mean, you're talking about a 5-star. I mean, this kid was destined to the NFL at some point. Maybe not a first rounder, later in the first round or something like that. But he played to his strong suit with this Heupel offense. So I think ultimately this was a big showing for Tennessee. This is what you use on the recruiting trail, man, and. There was a lot of Tennessee players that weren't on the roster. I'm Wanya Morris and some of these other cats that were through this program. So Eric Gray's another one. Yeah, there's another one. I can't remember. But yeah, it doesn't matter because it happened to other schools too. I saw Texas A&M. That guy down there was at Texas State or something. So. There are other players, it's transfer portal use. So, but I don't know where I was going with that, Mike. It's getting late. But I will say, I just to circle back around to Tennessee Vols. I think it's big, and it's not late round picks. This is 3rd round picks. This is big money picks, and a lot of these kids I think are going to great situations, and ultimately get a good shot to shine on the next round or next level.
And I would think, Shane, I mean, I could be wrong, but I think Hendon Hooker would have went a lot higher had he not injured his knee, even though they are saying that he should be good to go by the start of training camp. We'll see with that. But that's not to say that, he hurt his stock because I don't think he would have got drafted, Shane, had he come out this time last year. I don't think he would have got drafted at all. So he really did help his stock this year. It's just unfortunate he suffered that injury. I think he could have went a little bit higher. So last, Shane, Texas A&M already hit on them 3 selections. Devon Allchain in round 3 to Miami. I love that fit.
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to kill it down there. Antonio Johnson, Jacksonville, round 5. I thought he was a hell of a player. I don't know why he was available in round 5. And then Jalen Jones, round 7, defensive back to the Indianapolis Colts. So 3 selections, all 3 left school early. They're all making money now, so good for them. But again, Aggies are pretty loaded, Shane, just losing 3 players that are moving on to the NFL. Thoughts on Jimbo and company?
Well, I'm telling you right now, Mike, if A&M would have finished top 10 last year, these boys would have been drafted 2 rounds earlier, every one of them, and potentially some other players going. So this is more of a situational thing, but I think there's some steals. I love Allchain down there in Miami. He's probably going to be on a couple of my fantasy football teams, I would imagine. Like you said, Johnson, one of the best. Kind of sad that he slipped that far down, but again, that's another guy that shines in 4 years, and you're just like, damn, how did he get so late in the draft? So there's plenty to make out of this. You didn't make a bowl game, and you still put these guys in the league, so you can hang your hat on something. But I'm telling you right now, Mike, this may be the least number of Aggies to be drafted in the next 5 years.
Now, we did have a little bit of SEC news. Just want to hit on this real quick, Shane, because it is important. Well, I'm sure we'll talk more about this all off season. We've already kind of hit on it, but it is official since we last recorded. Alabama has added Notre Dame quarterback Tyler Buchner, and you said this is almost too perfect, Mike. I mean, they need a quarterback, jumps into the portal. Former coach calls him up. He's down there. He was supposed to visit Auburn, Shane. He was supposed to visit Cal, and I think Stanford. Goes down to Alabama, doesn't make any of the other trips. He's locked in.
Yeah.
Does that? I don't know. What's your thoughts, man? Does that excite you about Alabama's quarterback competition?
Yeah.
Does it? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it does. Because it felt like this was targeted, man. I mean, we joked about it being too perfect. Well, it almost feels.
So you're thinking they got their guy?
Yeah, I'm not saying.
Even though they tried to get the North Carolina guy, they tried to get the Miami guy, but they got their guy.
Yeah, but this guy wasn't in the portal.
I think it's more Papaw begging and pleading for someone to come down.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm going to spin it anyway that's positive here, Mike. I'm going to say, they didn't know he was even available. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're going over to these other cats that were in the portal. This guy wasn't in the portal. You know, they had to make a few phone calls. And I always think I've been watching this Better Call Saul, and he's always manipulating things to kind of get what he wants. That's what they were doing, like putting shit in his shoes. And he's like, God, I hate this fucking town, It's just like, I'm ready to get out of here. I think they were slowly manipulating him along the way to get him to come down to Tuscaloosa. So in the perfect world, I think that this was all orchestrated, and I think they got their guy. But worst case scenario, man, the pressure for the other two to perform. You clearly are not working. We've got to excel somewhere. So I think it's I mean, obviously, Mike, you want to crown your quarterback in spring. That's not happening in Tuscaloosa. Nobody was happy with the production we saw during that spring game. So I think this makes it interesting, but I think it makes it an interesting fall camp, man. We're going to be really tuned into this in the offseason here.
Okay. Well, brother, we went a little bit long on this one, recapping the entire NFL draft. You got anything before we hop off the line?
Mike, you are my first-round pick. You know that, right? No, it was always fun to watch NFL, watch some of the highlights, and kind of takes you back. It was good, and these kids getting an opportunity to play at the next level. That's what we're doing it, man. That's why they do it. They entertain us, and then they go get that paycheck. You know what I'm saying? So,
right.
Absolutely, I love this, brother, and I'm looking forward to some more news. And because that portal's jumping, man. I don't know if you've been noticing, but it seems like every 2 minutes somebody's entering that portal. So it's kind of interesting to see how this thing plays out this offseason.
No doubt. And we are absolutely loaded with voicemail questions. So we'll get to a lot of that in the days and weeks to come. But that's all we got to start the week strong, Shane. I appreciate you, as always. I appreciate each and every one of you for showing up. We'll catch you on the next one.
All right. See you guys. Go Vols.